We all want to make a positive impact on the world, but what do we have to experience to get there? This is Stripped Bare FM, where our shared stories of strategy, raw talk, and real people uplift and inspire you. Now, welcome the host of Stripped Bare FM, Catherine Contos.
Hello, everyone. When life deals you a hard hand early in life and you are left homeless as a teen, how do you use the experience to drive you into success? Today on Stripped Bare FM, I have the pleasure of talking to Nathalie Mendez, the creative director and CEO of Natalie Interior Architecture and Decade Up LLC, based in New York City. She has designed store spaces such as Ashley Furniture and Raymour Flanigan. She is also a single mom of a 13-year-old beautiful girl. Let's take a moment right here to share my book, Soul Shaker, A Whirlwind Awakening. It is a book that will tell you about my personal struggles on divorce, losing a business, all while having cancer, and how I used those experiences to catapult me to my optimal life and business. If you want to know how I did it, you can order it via my website, catherinecontos.com. Now back to our guest. Welcome, Natalie. Are you ready for some raw talk?
I'm ready.
Great. Natalie, as a young child, a lot of unthinkable traumas happened to you. Please share with us your life as a young Natalie.
Well, I was born and raised right here in New York City, Harlem, New York. I came from immigrant parents from the Dominican Republic. And I grew up with a mom who was fairly depressive and constantly in a depressive state and went through some really hard traumas herself. At a really young age, I was sent to the Dominican Republic because my mom was going through some things here in the States and she was trying to get her life together. So I was sent to the DR to live with family members out there and went through some trauma that I didn't realize I went through until I was later on in life, because the body does some crazy things like really protect your brain and forget things that happen. So later on in life, I started dealing with some trauma on sexual abuse, getting some really bad memories and just dreams and nightmares. And that came about when I went through a second trauma as a teenager where I was abused by two men at a party. And that completely changed the way I looked at life in general. And I myself went through like a pretty depressive stage at around the age of 14 and had to go through some major recovery there through some therapy and unfortunately didn't have the support that I needed or wanted from my parents. So I ended up leaving my home because of this. And there began my journey to recovering and really facing my trauma.
So how old were you when you were sent off to the Dominican?
I was around 2 years old.
Oh, so you were really young.
Yeah, I was a baby.
How old were you when you returned back to the States?
Around 6, 7, I believe. I started school here once I came back, yeah.
So you were really young when all this happened, and you repressed this memory up until you were a teenager when you did go through this trauma and it sort of brought everything back again, right? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Wow, incredible. And you were back home with your mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
At that age, and then all this happened and you didn't have the support you needed at home. I'm just trying to understand what happened. So you didn't have the support you were hoping for at home, and you decided to go out and venture on your own.
Yes. So I grew up in a very religious household, and there were certain things that were taboo. You know, you just don't speak about it. But when I went through this trauma, and I see this a lot in our culture, we directly go to, you know, what did you do wrong as a woman? Mm-hmm. And that's the experience I had with this. I was a young girl exploring and hanging out with my friends, and I happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it was pretty rough the way that it was dealt with in my church community, where the blame was placed on the woman. And I didn't agree with that. I've always been a really strong headed person with my own opinions, and I just could not understand why they would shame a woman who went through trauma. And because of that, I definitely didn't receive the support that I wanted and needed at that time, and I decided to leave my home.
That's a big decision for a 16-year-old to make at the time, and a scary one too.
Yes.
So it must have been pretty bad for you to run away from home, right? Were you a runaway, or did they know where you were?
So I had met my biological father when I was around 13 years old, and he lived in Massachusetts. And the first place I decided to go to was, I just said, I'm moving with my biological father. Did not know this man. Never really had a relationship with him, but I figured living with him couldn't be any worse than what I was going through at that time. And so I moved to Massachusetts. That's what I decided to do. And my mother and my stepfather knew that I was going to live with my father. And that lasted about a month or two, because I quickly realized that my father was an alcoholic. And there was other things that I also didn't want to deal with in that home. And after deciding to leave his home, I literally just went from house to house, friend to friend, sometimes park benches, sometimes, I was living in the streets. I would climb fire escapes to find a place to sleep for friends that were sneaking me into their home just so that I can have a bed. But yeah, it was my teenage years were rough. They were rough.
How long did that period last of you, right after you left your father's place to eventually finding somewhere to live, and you're going from park bench to park bench? How long was that period?
So when I was around 19 years old, I decided to come back to New York, and I started living in a little garage that was turned into an apartment, and I was making decent money then. I was doing little modeling gigs here and there. I started learning real estate, and I was working at a gym, and I just did all I could to give myself a safe place, a home. And yeah, so I was like around 19 years old when I started really making money and not concentrating as much in school, because I was also trying to graduate from high school at that time.
Oh, so you were still in school while you were basically homeless, right? Is that what
Yes.
you're telling me? Wow, that's incredible. So you had a very strong value system for yourself at that point to know that what was important for you. How scared were you being on the streets during that time?
I always considered myself pretty fearless, and I think my mom was always afraid of that side of me. So there were nights where I would cry and feel lonely, but to be honest, I don't really recall being afraid.
Really?
Yeah, I always felt like this was my decision. I decided to leave my home, and where I'm at is exactly where I decided to be. So I have a choice, and I need to make choices that are going to get me to where I want to go from now on.
What about the uncertainty of not knowing where you're going?
I think that was where the fear would come. I always envisioned myself just being a businesswoman from a little kid. Like, that was my dream. So I guess knowing that that's what I was aiming for and that I would do anything to get to my goal would make me fear less, because I trusted that I was going to do whatever it took to get to where I needed to get to. So the uncertainty was there, but the uncertainty was more exhilarating than anything else. That also comes with being young. Like, I have a whole world in front of me, and I'm just going to seize it. I feel like fear came to me, at least, at an older age. Once I had a child, once I became a mom, that's when I started really feeling fear.
Okay, so for you, it was like a new beginning.
Yeah.
So you were like reborn into this new life, and you were going to figure it out.
Basically.
Wow. Okay. That's great. And okay, so you're 19 now. You finally find a home, finally, like a roof over your head. And at what point did everything just change for you, where, you went from being homeless to starting your own business? What was it that just flipped and you started just launching yourself into this new life?
My daughter. When I realized I was pregnant, and that's when fear set in, and I was just like, I'm not ready for this. What am I going to do? But the minute that little one was born, she was my catalyst. There was no time to do anything else but just succeed, because I wanted to provide a very different life than I had. And I wanted this little one to have opportunities that I didn't necessarily have. So I was laser focused on just creating that. Once she was born, I went to work, and while I was pregnant, I got my real estate license. The minute she was born, I started selling real estate. And that's when I discovered my love for design and how good I was at it. It was really where my passion lied.
How old were you when you gave birth to your daughter?
21.
Okay, so quite young.
Yeah.
I'm happy that you did find that drive as soon as she was born. And, but the thing is, the drive was there always, right? You were an explorer. You weren't afraid. You were going to do what you needed to do no matter what. So that was actually the next step to your success, really.
Yeah.
So you started going into design. Okay, well, you started being a real estate agent first, right? Correct?
Yes.
And what was it? Was it home staging that started that?
Yeah. So I realized the minute that you home stage a place, it sells faster. And to me, the combination of numbers and design is so intriguing. It's like, all right, I can literally generate more income if I design things a specific way. And that was like the light bulb that hit. And I was able to realize that really design can create anything you want. You can literally create whatever income you want by designing something the right way. And I started exploring that a little more. In 2008, the market crashed, and it didn't make sense to sell real estate anymore. So I went through a little bit of a dip there. I moved my family to upstate New York, where life was a little more affordable. And I started there working at a daycare just to make ends meet while I figured out what I wanted to do. And then one day I just said, man, if I can design a home to sell it, then I can design retail and sell things better in retail spaces. And I just started analyzing that, and I walked into a retail space called Raymour and Flanigan up here in the East Coast, and I basically demanded a job. I was like, I want to learn. Just give me a job. And they did. They gave me, I wanted to learn design and how to design, but that wasn't available. So they gave me basically a secretary job. I was in customer care making phone calls. I learned everything about the back end of the business, the operations, where the furniture comes from. And then I got promoted and I started selling the furniture because I wanted to make more money. And then finally, a design job was opened and they gave me the opportunity to go for it.
A lot of people get stuck, though, when they're trying to do something like that, right? They get stuck because maybe the company doesn't want to give that opportunity, or they just, you know what I mean? Like, you get stuck in that secretarial job or that sales job.
Yeah.
Like, how were you able to change, to transform yourself or convince them, like, hey, I could do this. I could do the design part of this job. Like, let me do it. What did you do? Was there a strategy, or were you prepping them for years? What is it that you did?
It's consistency and building trust with the people in charge. Like, I made it a point to become very close. My mentor at Raymour and Flanigan was this man. I'll never forget him. His name is Larry Gallagher. And he knew my passion. And he saw that whatever I did, I would do. You can give me a phone and sit me at a secretary desk, or put me on the sales floor. I was going to do both things with the same exact passion. So building that trust and asking for guidance as well, because I would ask, okay, how can I do this better? And then apply what I learned and do it with passion. That trust that I build with my mentors, with the higher ups in the company, was what made them believe that if they gave me this opportunity, I was going to crush it. And I did.
And were you designing stuff meanwhile? Like, when you were in sales, were you like, okay, let's grab a pillow here, move this furniture around?
Yes, I was. I was helping the visual merchandiser and giving him little tips on, oh, maybe you should put that in that corner, So they also saw that I was very interested in designing. And when people would come and buy furniture, I was actually consulting them on how to design their home. So I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what the consumer wants. I learned a lot about different styles of design, and I hadn't gone to school for design. So I was learning on the job.
So what you did basically is, and what people should understand is you had a goal in your mind, okay, of what you wanted to do. You knew exactly, you were clear on your why and your what and what your passion was and what the end result needed to be. And you just went for it regardless of what position you were taking. You just said, you know what, let me just get my toe in there.
Yeah.
And that opened up the doors to everything.
Yeah, I truly believe you need to jump in. I find that most people are so focused on this is the way to get to this particular position. First we have to go to school, then, you have to train. And I think that people limit themselves when they do that. There's always a back way to getting to where you want to go. There's always another way. There could be 15 different ways. It doesn't have to be so linear. And that's what I played around with, and I still do. Whenever I want to get inside of a particular project, let's say, it's the state that I want to work with, then I start connecting with people that are involved in politics or in the state. So there's different ways. It doesn't have to necessarily be, hey, I need to apply for this job and then wait for an answer. Like, find a way to get your foot in the door.
Right. There's an extreme example I'm going to show right now, which, someone had told me or I'd heard of. I don't remember. But they said, what would happen if there was a gun to your head? Would you just close your eyes and die, or would you figure out other options to get out of that position? Right. Wow. So, like I said, it's an extreme example, but it's the same thing. There's always a way to solve a problem. And it's not only, the typical way. You have to look at, your left or your right to see if there's another way of you getting there, regardless of your experience or, your book smarts. So you started as a designer. They hired you as a designer. Is that correct? And then how did you go from there to go owning your own business finally?
So, you know what? It was so unexpected. So I got recruited by this other furniture company. I started becoming pretty well known for what I was doing because when I designed a space, I would increase revenue. So people started talking in the industry. The industry is pretty small. So I received a phone call. They were looking for a visual merchandiser to pretty much just refresh their stores, particularly one that they were considering on closing. And I interviewed, they offered me great money, and I jumped. I said, all right, let's try this new thing. So I went and I worked for them, and I absolutely hated my job. I didn't like the people. I didn't like the values. It was just, I was miserable. And I really didn't like my manager either. So throughout that process, I realized I can really do this on my own. There's something called every year, twice a year, I had the visual merchandising head of the company would go to what's called World Market. And that's like the fashion week of furniture. It's where all the new designs come out and people go to this huge trade show and they pretty much pick the furniture for the next season that they're going to sell in their stores. Now, they would come back with these experiences and show us pictures of, oh my God, this is what market looks like. This is what people design out there. And I just told myself, and I said it out loud in front of my manager, and I said, I'm going to design at World Market one day. And she looked at me and she was like, well, you really need to be a prestigious interior designer to really design at market. Majority of them are older women who've been in the industry for a really long time. And that triggered something in me because I'm pretty competitive.
Yeah.
So I said, no, I'm going to design at market. So when I saw that things weren't going the way I wanted to, I just saw an opportunity at designing for market. That was like the top place to design. And I opened up a LinkedIn account. And I started just putting my information on LinkedIn, what I do. And randomly one day I get a message from a factory that produces stuff in China who opened up a showroom at market, coincidentally. When I got that phone call, I remember I was at work that day and they said, we would really like to speak to you tomorrow. Can you make it tomorrow? And I said, absolutely. I took the day off that day and I went to this meeting. And the meeting went wonderful. It was this company. They wanted to design something amazing for the world market. And I was ecstatic. I went back to work the next day and they were so upset that I took the day off that they fired me.
Oh.
And I was like, you know what? I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make designing at market work. My first client cut me an $80,000 check to design their showroom.
Wow.
And I haven't stopped since then.
Look at that. Was that luck? Like, how did they find you? Suddenly, you just moved towards that way. It's like the law of attraction, right? You said it and it came to you.
I truly believe in the love of I said
This
it
is
out loud.
proof. This
I
is
said
proof.
it out loud and I got a client. And not only did I get a client, the following year I was named preferred vendor for the world market. So I went from one client to 10 clients in the same building. And it was just like, sometimes I sat down and I was like, unbelievable. When you think something and you say it out loud and you affirm it, the law of attraction truly works. But then there's a part where you have to take action, right? I took action. I went on LinkedIn and I started advertising myself as a showroom designer.
Wow. Tell me, did you ever bump into that manager during those times when you were designing,
I'm
that
so
space?
glad that you asked because I walked into my showroom and I was like, yes. Like, this is what it's about. Don't tell me I can't do something. I'll show you different.
Were you like, well, hello, welcome?
Hugged me and she was like, this is beautiful. I can't believe. And it was a great moment. I got to tell you, it was a great moment.
Good. I'm glad, because, hopefully she learned also that, what, do not put limitations on people because you know what? You never know what somebody could do. I don't care what age they are or what experience they have. The limitations are just that. They're limitations and they're not meant for anybody, really. Correct? Yeah.
Very true.
That's awesome, Natalie.
We put limitations on ourselves too.
Right.
And other people put limits on us, but then the limitations that really stop us are the ones we place on ourselves. Those are the worst, which is why I totally believe in just personal development and really digging deep into the things you tell yourself.
Right, because we believe them, right? When it's us saying it to ourselves, we actually believe it. That's why we're saying it to ourselves.
Absolutely. And we often take what other people say and we create stories and we manifest those things.
Yeah.
So it's really important to analyze what you're thinking and if you're truly believing what other people think of you. And then once you analyze that, change that story and go for what you want. That's what I've learned throughout this whole process. And I really do feel like the stories get scarier as we grow older. I was more fearless younger than I am now. Now I'm a little more cautious. So now I'm constantly questioning my stories and questioning, why am I fearful of this? And how do I change the thought process so that I just jump the way I used to always jump?
Well, I guess it's because you also have more responsibilities right now, right? Especially your daughter. That's the biggest one. You have to make sure that everything is stable for her. So it makes sense. But at the same time, are the fears really real? That's where we have to question if the fear is actual or is it just like a limitation that we are putting on ourselves?
Absolutely.
Natalie, I know my listeners will love to know even more about you and your strategies on how you made it through all of this adversity into success. So let's take a quick peek and fast track through some questions, okay?
Okay.
So first, what is your definition of success?
My definition of success is just being completely at peace with what you're doing and who you are, regardless of what that is, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or you're running a business or you are the operations manager to a factory. Like, it doesn't matter. You define success based on how authentic and how you feel about where you're at right now.
Yeah, definitely. What is the one thing you are most excited about today?
Today, I am super excited about a lot of things. But I'm most excited about just the opportunity to continue growing. Like I've learned a lot in the last year, about myself, about my business, especially during this COVID pandemic. It's been a lot of reflecting on how am I going to pivot my business, my family, myself to adjust to the new norm. And I'm super excited for that adjustment period because it's new and it's fun and it's going to create new possibilities for how I do business and how others really interact with my business and the businesses of my clients.
I'm happy to hear that you took that perspective because some people let the fear, control their mind during this time. So I'm really happy to hear that you took that time to grow and to change your perspective to new beginnings instead of endings.
Yeah, absolutely.
What book would you recommend to our SB listeners and why?
Oh, there's so many good ones. Okay, so there is a book I'm reading now called Radical Honesty. And it is an amazing book. It's changed the way I look at what authenticity truly is, what being authentic and being real and honest, what it truly means to be that. Highly recommend anyone who hasn't read it to read that book.
Oh, I'm noting that book down. Because, this is what this show is about, right? Becoming like raw with your emotions, what happened to you and your story especially, So that's a great book. Oh, thank you for that. Okay, so now for a soul shaker question. If you woke up tomorrow and you were stripped bare of everything in your business and only had shelter and food and your family, of course, what would be the first things you would do in the next 30 days with only $500 in the bank?
$500 in the bank. What would I do? I would find a way to flip that $500. I definitely, yeah, that is really would be the only option for me. How do I take these $500 and create something that will generate more income?
Any ideas you have in your head? Like first thought?
$500, huh?
Yeah.
Right now, I would probably invest it on PPE supplies.
I think that's pretty safe.
We sell some masks at the corner bodegas and see where that takes me.
You know what? That's a good plan for right now. Natalie, on a last and final note, what's your one takeaway message that my listeners need to hear from you today?
Never stop growing. Never stop questioning and never stop being curious. I feel that a lot of people I've met in business, they reach this point where they feel like they've got it all figured out. And then something happens that shakes you. And you realize you know nothing. So it's extremely important to continue to question yourself. That's been the biggest lesson for me, not to get comfortable with being comfortable and not getting comfortable in my own thoughts, but constantly questioning them and searching for answers outside of yourself and inside of yourself. Just not getting comfortable with what you know. Every day I realize I don't know much.
You know what? I find that dangerous when people get to the point where they think they've figured out everything.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous place to be. It truly is. Yeah.
It truly is. To me, it's death.
Yeah.
It's death. Because then you stop understanding.
You stop living.
Yeah. I mean, even what's going on in the world today with all the riots and it's just people are refusing to understand each other. And that comes from lack of being curious and questioning, thinking that you know it, you know the answer.
Yeah, I agree with you. So what's the best way for my listeners to connect with you?
I am on Instagram. My handle is Deck It Up. You can find me by just typing in Nathalie with an H, Mendez, and you'll find Deck It Up there. I am launching a new brand as well. which is called Natalie Interior Architect. You'll be able to find me through the Instagram. And on LinkedIn, I am also Nathalie Mendez. So you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Natalie, thank you so much for sharing with us your stripped bare story and your success.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun. I had a lot of fun doing this.
I enjoy talking to you every time. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I can't wait to connect with your listeners too. That would be really cool.
That would be really cool. You gave a lot of value to them, and I hope they resonate with it and they take away all the great value that you did bring on today. So thanks again, and good luck in your new venture.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
That's all for this episode of Stripped Bare FM. Start living your best life. Head to CatherineContos.com for more information and resources, as well as ways to connect with Catherine directly. That's available exclusively on CatherineWithAC, KONTOS.com.